Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the incompetent fuckwit who is going to be using all of this green shit around me. You see the green shit? I'm going to harness all that green shit so I can catch some underdogs on this card. Rah! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. I don't know the green screen and the J drive and all this horse shit. Leave me the fuck alone. Look away. Listen to the audio. I'm sure I'll have some insights for you for every single fight. But the green shit's gotta stay. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos if you want to see more of these production values. In the first fight of the night, we have Stephanie Luciano versus Talita Alencar. This is a rematch from a year ago or so, and my prediction for the fight is Talita Alencar interrupts me with a text message. Fuck you. Now I'm picking against you. You bitch. No, I'm picking Talita Alencar to win. I think she should win this fight. She's, it's no lock with the way things ended there, but I think her grappling will still be an advantage for her. I think she's got the one glaring, obvious hole from that fight that she can patch up, and that's managing her energy and managing her cardio. She's got to slow this fight down, Talita Alencar. Make it a grappling match and slow it down. She came out of the gate red hot in their first fight and burnt herself out. Although I'll say this, she does need to maintain that athletic advantage she has on the feet, because it's the only thing she's got going on the feet. Striking-wise, she's outgunned. Technically, and with the height and the reach and the rest of it, Luciano's going to win the striking battle. But when Talita Alencar is firing on all cylinders, she's quicker, much more agile, and she does probably hit harder, punch for punch, even though she's the naturally smaller woman. But I think she's got some athletic advantages, which, could serve her well on the feet for a few minutes just for her to get the fight to the ground. And that's got to be plan A for Talita Alencar, and to really slow things down once on the ground, because Stephanie Luciano will not stop coming. And I'm not just saying that based on their first fight. I've seen every fight I can from Stephanie Luciano. The one fight I haven't seen, ironically, and I don't know how ironic it is her loss to Andressa Romero. And I say it's probably not ironic because I was listening to an interview with Alencar where Talita Alencar said that Stephanie and her team had the loss scrubbed from the internet with some money or pressure or whatever. So, good job for them. I'm the fucking idiot who wasted an hour looking for the fight, but good job. Still, though, I got the impression from what Alencar said that it was a grappling loss. The girl's a black belt, and it was a decision. So, I suppose another notch for the durability of Luciano. My pick is Alencar wins by decision. And it is because I do trust the durability and the traits of Luciano. I do think she's technically outgunned, and she could get submitted, even overwhelmed and TKO'd if things go wrong. But she's been in some bad spots in her short career. Again, I haven't seen her one fucking loss, but at least I know she didn't get finished. But in a lot of her wins, she showed a lot of great traits. She's been 5 hard rounds, too. 5 rounds once. And she showed against Talita Alencar herself in the first fight, which is obviously the most relevant fight, that she could handle what was coming from a much more aggressive Alencar. So I'd be surprised if Luciano got finished in any way. As for the knockout potential, again, if Alencar gets one, it's probably a positional thing on the ground, and I don't think it would happen. Luciano, I think she could get a finish down the stretch if she does beat Alencar and force her into fatiguing. If Alencar starts fading, Luciano with some better place shots and ripping the body at the right moment could definitely get her out of there. She's got sharper striking, may not be the most powerful, but she does have 2 TKOs as a pro. And while they aren't, Ngannou versus Overeem knockout fucking kill shots, one punch did still get the ball rolling with each finish. One shot really knocked one girl out, took one girl out completely, and it put the other girl on Queer Street, as they say. I don't know. Lesbian Street. And she beat her against the cage until she got a TKO. My point is, she's definitely not going to be the more, like I said, I think Alencar is the more powerful punch. But Stephanie Luciano, with her striking and her cardio advantage and that left hook of hers, she's got a shot at putting away a fatiguing Alencar. Still, though, I think if she is the win, it's out scratching and out clawing Talita Alencar, being taken down, getting back up, and winning a hard-earned decision. That's what I think would be most likely. And if that does happen, I'm assuming she wins round three as well. But again, I got to go with Alencar. I think Alencar still has that grappling advantage. I still think she'll be able to get Stephanie Luciano to the mat. I think she's still got the better submission game, obviously, where she'd have a better chance of getting a finish on the ground, especially if there's no fatigue involved. And you know what? In the Hani Dos Santos fight, I thought she lost it. I thought she lost, but I thought she performed pretty damn well. And I thought she kind of took away a lot of that stain that was left in the first Stephanie Luciano fight. Her cardio didn't look bad. There was a moment, I think, Paul Felder said he saw her like gagging between rounds 2 and 3 or something, but she pushed through that. In round three, I thought she lost. I thought she lost the fight and whatever, but she pushed hard enough and made it to the final bell and got the victory. So, whatever. But I do think it's still a very similar close matchup to where they were a year ago. This is not Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad, which I got totally fucking wrong. And of course, we got another rematch here in the main event. But this is a fight from a year ago. Some distinct improvements that have to be made, but a very short time to do it. And it's not like they knew this fight was coming. So it's an interesting battle. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes the way of Luciano, but I'm picking Talita Alencar, and she has my bet. Up next, we have Yusuf Zalal versus Jarno Errens. My prediction for the fight is Yusuf Zalal. I've got him winning by decision, a majority decision, just to fuck with your head. But I do think there's value on Jarno Errens and no value on Yusuf Zalal. He's a 4-1 favorite. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, he looked incredible in his last fight in a lot of ways. So did Jarno Errens, frankly. Each guy's coming off a solid underdog victory. But he shouldn't be 4-1 in this fight. I'm tempted to bet on Jarno Errens right now. The only thing that's stopping me is the fact that I think Jarno Errens, or really anybody's only path to victory against Yusuf Zalal, is decision. So if I'm going to waste money, I'd rather waste it on the prop at better odds. And of course, if the odds aren't too great, I'll just play the money line anyway. But yeah, happy to waste money on Jarno Errens here, although not a lot. I'm a nickel and dime shitheel. But I do think Yusuf Zalal should win this fight. Don't hold me to the majority decision. The basis for the pick is I think he's the better grappler, even though Jarno is a judoka first and foremost. And I also think Yusuf Zalal is the more willing grappler, which is really what this is going to come down to. Each guy has been neutralized in his UFC losses, a good amount of control. And here in this fight, I think either guy can win by securing top position or grinding the other one. But I'm going with Yusuf Zalal. I think Yusuf Zalal is a step ahead grappling wise, and I do think he's also got just in general more hustle in him. I'd expect him if he's losing the wrestling battle and he's not able to take down Jarno Errens, I still think Yusuf's got enough great traits where he can still have a great shot at winning the decision. I'd favor him to win anyway. So Zalal by decision is the pick. The bet is on Jarno Errens. And now let me talk about their losses. Yusuf Zalal's got both guys have a record of 14-5-1. Zalal's never been finished. All 5 are by decision. He lost to Sean Woodson, Seungwoo Choi, and Ilia Topuria in his last 3 losses before leaving the UFC. His last fight was a draw against Damon Blackshear. And that was another example of his cardio and the rest of it. He's got a lot of great traits, Yusuf Zalal. Really took it to Damon Blackshear when he needed to. Battled his way hard back into a draw. Almost took him out with body shots. Ilia Topuria was a little too much for him, but in the end, he gave Ilia a lot of trouble in round 3 where it wasn't easy. He's got a lot of great traits. Durability, of course, you can tell on paper. He's got 5 losses, which is a lot, and they're against good fighters. Even before he got to the UFC, one of his 2 losses was the Chepe Mariscal. And of course, I had to rewatch that fight because they're both on this card. I just think he's a really tough guy to get out of there, Yusuf Zalal. You can outposition him, and you can out hustle him, perhaps. Probably not, but you're going to have a hard time finishing Yusuf Zalal. Jarno Errens, he's got a record of 14-5-1, same fucking record. He's been finished once. It was by guillotine choke 5 or 6 years ago. But other than that, all of his losses are by decision, and a few of them are in the UFC. Sengwoo Choi, who of course beat both them by decision. Sengwoo Choi scored a lot of control time, was actually able to judo toss Jarno to the mat, and also chopped him down in the end. In round 3, those kicks added up, and Jarno couldn't stand. So that was the biggest moment of the fight, came at the very end, but it secured the victory for Sengwoo Choi. His other loss was to William Gomis in his UFC debut. That's actually a majority decision because the first round was 10-10. 10-10, not on all 3 judges' scorecards, but just gives you an idea of what kind of a round it was. But still, in general, I thought he should have lost that fight. William Gomis had better control, more control, and was in his face. And then before that, again, he lost once by 2 other fights by decision. Once recently was a championship fight in 2022 to this guy Mert with an even worse name than his fucking first name. An even worse last name than his first name. And that was the guy that he actually beat, Jarno Errens. Jarno Errens beat him by 3-round decision a year before losing the 5-round fight. But in general, the story of the fight was being out-wrestled and out-controlled. And that was the story of the loss. Also, technically, he was knocked down, but he wasn't really knocked down. I think Jarno Errens is the more powerful fighter here, despite not having too many knockouts. I think Jarno Errens has good striking. He could have a technical advantage over Yusuf Zalal, although I think Yusuf is faster. And I think Jarno is stronger in tight, which could work with judo throws or just physicality battle, but, pinning someone against the cage or whatever. So it's not like he's totally lost here, and I'm excited to bet on him, but it's really only because of the money line. I think, I should say the odds, because I might not even bet on the money line. But I think Yusuf Zalal should win this fight. If he finds himself in any danger, I think he's got every trait to keep himself safe. If he's not able to out-grapple Jarno Errens, I think he's got every trait to give himself a shot at outpointing Jarno Errens anyway. So Zalal by decision is the pick, and that would have to be a really juicy line for me to bet on it because he's a 4-1 fucking favorite. But again, I'll throw some money on Jarno Errens, whether it's by money line or decision, which I do think is his only path to victory. Up next, we have Diniz versus Carl Williams. My prediction for this fight is Carl Williams wins. It's tough to go with a method of victory, but I'll go with a TKO stoppage on the ground, as you might imagine. Decision certainly seems more like his thing since he's arrived at the UFC. But this is a fighter, Diniz, who has a very limited ground game. And I think this will open up chances for Carl Williams to get his first finish if the fight's going the way I expect it to. He's got to get the fight to the ground. On the feet, he is seriously outgunned, as are most fighters against Diniz, a glory kickboxer. He's only 7-0, and he's got 7 knockouts. And his biggest test came against Austin Lane in his UFC debut. Austin was able to get him down, and in moments he looked like fucking BJ Penn over there, but he wasn't able to go through him. Janata was able to live the fight another round, and that was it for the chin of Austin Lane. But Carl Williams, he's never been knocked out. Let me just talk about his record. He's got 1 loss, and it's a triangle choke. Not a path to victory, and it's to a middleweight fighter, I believe, Jason Butcher over in Bellator. Not a path to victory for Diniz. Doesn't mean he can't create a new path. If he does, I believe he knocks out Carl Williams standing in the first 2 rounds. and doesn't let Williams strike his way into takedowns. But the prediction is Williams strikes his way into takedowns. I mean, the guy's looked really tough to deny. He won on the Contender Series 3 fights ago, 4 fights ago, whatever, against this guy Jimmy Lawson, a serious wrestler. I forget, Penn State, whatever, but an NCAA wrestler, and he was ragdolled by Carl Williams and controlled. And then we've seen Carl do it over Lucas Dreschke, Chase Sherman, and Justin Tafa. Not the highest level of opposition, to be fair, but he still looked like a beast. He's weathered storms when he's needed to. He's been clipped. Had his legs chopped. He's faced a lot of adversity, but he's proven to be a good heavyweight grinder with exceptional takedown prowess. So it's all about getting past that first level of offense, or defense, I should say, of Jonathan Diniz. But once he's in tight, I don't think Carl Williams will have trouble ragdolling Jonathan Diniz to the mat. And once he's on top of him, again, he's not Mr. Jiu-Jitsu, but I expect him to have a distinct advantage. I mean, Austin Lane looked really sharp on Jonathan Diniz. He was working him and controlling him comfortably. And I think if Carl Williams is able to do that and have that round one, in round two, he's got a great chance of getting a TKO, as opposed to Austin Lane, who really just had that small window to make something work. But yeah, I think Carl Williams has a lot going for him. He's really tough to deny. Again, he's the one guy with a loss, and that is not a path to victory on paper. And this is really just a fight where I am looking to learn more about Jonathan Diniz, but I think we're going to learn that he's a limited fighter. He's a guy that I don't expect too much from, although I think I said the same shit about Adesanya and Pereira and fucking Cesar Almeida and whoever the fuck. I understand it's not MMA from 20 years ago, and you can't just take him down and put him in a fucking forearm choke like Tom Erickson. But first of all, if that type of fight happens, it's in this matchup here. There is a chance Carl Williams wins with a forearm choke like fucking Romanov or something. But I do think he's got enough going on altogether where he'll have a few different paths to victory if he takes the fight to the ground. And at the very least, he'll be secure on top of Jonathan Diniz. Austin Lane was able to control him. Carl Williams has been pretty beastly so far. So Carl Williams is the pick. Carl Williams is the bet, minus 218. I'll look for the props to see if anything is a long shot. But like I said, I'm having a hard time decide on which way he would win anyway. Of course, he is a decision fighter so far in the UFC, 4 consecutive decisions. Maybe those prop bets, those finish props will be juicy and it'll be worth a stab. But as of now, I'm comfortable with the money line of Carl Williams because, again, it covers everything. And, pulling for him to win and keep the winning streak going. And on the flip side, I should say, Jonathan Diniz by knockout. I'm sure the betting public and the odds makers are all over it. I'll never expect a juicy line compared to his money line, but that's his path to victory for sure. Next up, we had Pannie Kianzad versus Carol Rosa. My prediction for the fight is Carol Rosa wins, and I've got her winning by spinning back decision in round 3. Decision is how this one should go, as you might imagine. Really, for either girl, if you feel inclined to pick Pannie Kianzad, decision's the way to go. But I do think Carol Rosa should win. I think she's a little technically sharper, even though I expect Pannie to bring the pressure. I think Carol Rosa can take her. I think she's more likely to take the fight to the ground and score points there. And Carol Rosa's got a lot of great traits going on as well. Both girls are reliable round 3 fighters. Each girl is really tough to out hustle down the stretch. It's happened a few times where they've lost round 3 on points, but both girls will at least fight for your money. Carol Rosa, I think, again, the difference will be that she can control Pannie Kianzad in tight. I think she's just a little more refined of a grappler, a more willing grappler. I should mention their losses. Each girl has been finished a few times. I'll just cover that, even though I'm very sure it's going to a decision. Carol was tapped twice before getting to the UFC. to Melissa Gatto and Larissa Pacheco. Gatto's in the UFC. She's a killer, maybe underrated. And Larissa Pacheco is outside the UFC, and she's rated one of the best fighters in the world. Kianzad was submitted once by this girl, Canuto, in Invicta. Just took her back and choked her, rear naked choke. And then twice more by rear naked choke in both her first and her last UFC fight to the same girl, Macy Chiasson. Macy's a big, dangerous giraffe, and she was too much for Pani. And Pani was also TKO'd once, and it was on the ground to Tanya Evinger, who's she was like the female Matt Lindland, just a beast of a wrestler and a really tough matchup for someone with such little experience like Pani Kianzad had. I don't think either girl should get a finish. I don't think either girl has the offense to go through any potential weaknesses in their defense. I think this will come down to points, unless, of course, there's a cut or whatever the fuck. And I do think Carol Rosa should win on points. Pani Kianzad will bring pressure standing up. She'll be trying to crowd Carol, which is not nothing. That counts on the judges' scorecards. But I still think Carol is a little sharper technically. And again, I think she's more willing and more likely to take the fight to the ground or whatever, to the clinch, wherever the fuck it ends up. But I expect Carol Rosa to end up with more control, and I expect her to win this fight. She's coming off a fight in which she did lose round 3 on a rare occasion to Irene Aldana. It was one of the best fights ever, Carol Rosa versus Irene Aldana. Maybe not one of the best fights ever, but one of the best fights in recent memory. And it was a tooth and nail battle. Carol Rosa almost took her out, chopped her legs down in round 1, wasn't able to get her out of there, and then was relegated to giving us a fucking war, and she stepped up and did so. She was outgunned, but she was still trying, throwing, and it was a good look for a lot of her traits, which I think she can rely upon here if need be. But again, she's usually the better fighter in round 3, as is Pani Kianzad. Pani Kianzad, I said that before she fought Ketlin Vieira, that I thought Vieira would win. I think I said I thought Vieira would win, but I said I think Pani will win round 3. She's just more of a hustler. And it looked like she was going to be controlled in round 3, and she reversed position and took over the round anyway. She does have that hustle. But again, technically, I think she's at a disadvantage here against Carol Rosa, and I don't think Carol Rosa will give her a stand-up war and make it all about traits and whatever. If forced to, she'll do that, but I think she's going to be fighting a cleaner fight, even more comfortable on the back foot with Pani pressuring her, and she'll figure out a way to outpoint her, whether it's striking in the clinch or on the ground, which is what I'm thinking she's going to look to do. Not for the whole fight, but to mix it in there. So Carol Rosa by decision is the pick. I will wait for the props, see what they look like, because, decision is the pick, again, for either fighter. And, we'll see what it looks like. But as of now, no bet. Next up, we have the latest edition of I'm picking this guy, but I'm betting on that guy. This guy is Danny Barlow. I've got him winning by decision. And that guy is Nikolai Verettenikov. And I don't really give a fuck how he wins. I just want to cash on his almost 3-1 odds. It's not a heavy play. Again, I'm picking against him. But I think they got the odds wrong. And I think on records alone, there's a chance Verettenikov, just by being the toughest guy he's fought, perhaps, is able to give him a very stiff test and give him problems he hasn't faced yet. But the pick is Danny Barlow because he has answered every question he's been asked so far. He's 8-0, and he's won in impressive fashion. A lot of nice knockouts, but most impressively, his round 3 knockout over Josh Quinlan. Getting that finish down the stretch in your UFC debut is very impressive for Danny Barlow and his 8-0 career. The one time he's really been tested is when he fought this guy, Dustin DePuma, I believe his name is. And Dustin, this is like 2 or 3 fights into the career for Barlow. Dustin was able to take Danny down and take his back and put him into a rear naked choke. It looked like it was over. But Danny Barlow fought through it, kept himself safe, fought the hands, and took over the fight and ended up outboxing him comfortably in rounds 2 and 3. It was a very impressive victory, but it's the biggest moment of adversity that Danny Barlow has faced in his career so far. I mean, he's been hit a bunch, but whatever. That's fighting. And I should mention he lost via heel hook as an amateur. Just know that I know that happened. Verettenikov is not a big submission threat, though. He's only got one submission, and it comes actually a year ago. So it was nice that it happened in a recent fight. But it wasn't over the best fighter, this guy DeMarcus Jackson, and it wasn't with the best guillotine, if I'm being honest. But still, it happened, and there's always a chance it happens here. But I do think if Verettenikov is to beat Danny Barlow, it's making shit happen on the feet or just winning the battle on the feet. And that, I guess, would surprise me because my prediction is Danny Barlow and his straight left hand from hell is going to be too much for Verettenikov. I think that's the best weapon in the fight, Danny Barlow's straight left hand. I think the second best weapon is the leaping left hook of Verettenikov, though. Still, though, Danny Barlow has 5 inches of reach and 1 inch of height to complement his straight left hand, which does help make it the best weapon in this matchup. Verettenikov has been TKO'd once. I haven't seen it. You know me. I put in fucking the time trying to watch the fights and especially the losses, but I just haven't seen that loss. But I'll say this. He's got 3 losses early in his career. He was finished once by TKO, finished once by submission. I was able to see that, and lost by decision. All 3 guys are at least good, if not have the potential to be good. There's like some deceptive records going on. One guy's a dog shit record, and the other guy's tough to make out with. But my point is, combined with the fact that they're 10 years ago, these losses, you can dismiss them as not illegitimate losses, but not traits that you can rely upon. Especially because I haven't seen the fight. I don't know if it was a chin issue or ground and pound. But either way, I'm not willing to write off the chin or the grappling defense of Verettenikov because in the last 10 years, he's been undefeated aside from one fight, and it was the Michael Morales. And that guy, who is a killer in the UFC right now, kicking ass and taking names, he had a really tough fight with Verettenikov. Verettenikov survived, first of all, which is very impressive against Michael Morales, but also gave him a good battle. Slowed down a little bit in the end and did lose the wrestling battle overall. But still, it was a close fight. The other close fight he's had in the last 10 years was this guy, Stephen Jones. And that was another fight where he did slow down a little bit, although they both did, but he really hurt Jones early in round 3, but then conceded top position, allowed himself to be taken down, and in the end, it was a really close fight. But he ended up winning that fight by decision, Verettenikov, because he did a lot of good damage in that fight. My point is, I do think there are some holes in his game. I can't count on Danny Barlow to take him down, though. I don't think that's a path to victory or an idea in Danny Barlow's head. He's not a wrestler. He's a striker who's looking to land his left hand on you. So that's room for Verettenikov to mix things up. I think if Verettenikov is able to get his striking going, he's probably got a better takedown. I know he's a judoka, a sambo guy, first and foremost, but he's got the longer MMA career, much more experience and better experience. I think he'll be able to at least make it work once and get Danny Barlow to the mat if he's trying to. If that's plan A, I think Verettenikov can put it together and get him to the mat. The thing is, Verettenikov, I mentioned those 2 fights. Those are the only 2 fights against anybody really good that he's fought in the last 10 years. Also, Anthony Ivy, who's not a bad fighter at all, and he crushed Anthony Ivy with knees to the body, really. Took him out. But still, there's a lot of upside. Again, Verettenikov, he hasn't looked perfect, but in these close fights, he's looked durable, and he's made shit work for him against some of the better fighters he's fought. So I think there's room for him to win this fight. It warrants a bet, but it's really a long shot. I think Danny Barlow should win. A knockout wouldn't surprise me. I'd be a little more confident if I'd seen that TKO loss of Verettenikov. But I do think Danny Barlow by decision has to be my pick. Danny Barlow, he's really comfortable fighting longer. He doesn't have any cardio issues. He keeps his power down the stretch, as he proved against Josh Quinlan. And in general, I think he's at such a physical advantage over Verettenikov on the feet, where he should be winning the points battle anyway. So it's on Verettenikov to force a change in this fight because physically he's already a step behind. So Barlow by decision is the pick, and the bets will be on Verettenikov because we're all fucking stupid here at MMA Al Dente. Me and you? I don't know. There's no one else. Next up, we have Toshiomi Kazama versus Charalampos Grigoriou. My prediction for the fight is Grigoriou wins by knockout. I think the biggest liability in this whole matchup is the chin of Toshiomi Kazama. He's been knocked out 3 times in the last 4 fights, in the last 2 years or whatever. And even though he's 27, he's not a healthy 27-year-old, and it's a big concern moving forward. And Charalampos Grigoriou, even though he's got an 8-4 record, not too pretty, 6 of those 8 wins are knockouts or TKOs. He's got the power and the physicality to go through the chin of Kazama, and that is the pick. As for Kazama winning, even though the second biggest liability in the matchup is Charalampos Grigoriou's cardio, and it's been exploited in a few of his losses, and I was all over it when it was Chad and Helger's turn last time. But despite that, I still think Kazama's only real path to victory is an early finish, going through Grigoriou on the ground. I think Kazama is so much better on the ground with that top game, that Shinya Aoki, if you know who he is, type of ground game, fucking hammer locks from the top. He's got multiple hammer lock submissions, and he's got he's got a lot of different submissions. I think he could threaten Grigoriou from any position early when he's fresh. But even though Grigoriou's never been submitted and he's training with Matt Serra and Aljo and whoever and Marab, I still think Kazama could go through him early if he's able to take him down. But I'm not picking that to happen. I'm going with Grigoriou. I think he's able to keep this standing. I know he's got to have that on his mind, keeping this fight standing, and especially not letting himself get taken down early. And then he's just got to find that chin of Kazama. Kazama's got a button on his chin, and Charalampos is going to be looking to press it or whatever. I don't know. Grigoriou has 4 losses, like I said. 1 by TKO, 3 by decision. He lost to this guy in Ring of Combat I wasn't able to see. That's the New Jersey promotion around here. That was in 2017 by decision. Then he lost twice in CFFC, decision to Josh Smith, and a TKO to Christian Rodriguez in round 3, as you might imagine. That's the one time he's been finished, and it was totally cardio. It wasn't his chin. He was just a standing punching bag for Christian Rodriguez. He had fallen off a cliff, and Rodriguez, as you know, much like Chad and Helger, or if you don't know, now you know, they're both round 3 fighters, beastly round 3 fighters, and Charalampos Grigoriou just wasn't able to keep up, got put away in that fight, and against Chad and Helger, he had fallen apart in that fight as well, and Chad completely took over. But that's the biggest liability, but it doesn't mean he hasn't looked good in longer fights. He had a TKO victory over this guy, Chris DeSanel, in round 5. And that was one where he got him out of there with a minute left with leg kicks after mixing in a lot of grappling. Wasn't the best fighter he's fought by any means, but it was a good, well-rounded victory from Charalampos Grigoriou. Looked like a real seasoned vet. His best win, of course, comes against Cameron Smotherman, who he went through on the Contender Series. I think Smotherman was supposed to win that fight, and he just denied him and went right through him. He beat that other guy, Joey Crisostomo, got him out of there by round 2 TKO. That was actually a grappling victory. He took him down, I believe, throughout all round 1, and then in round 2, worked him over throughout the round, advanced a full mount, and got a victory with his jiu-jitsu. So he's not a total fish out of water here, and I do think grappling-wise, he can still use that strength and physicality to just kind of blue belt guard stuff the guard of the Toshiomi Kazama and be the physical guy. But in general, he's going to want to keep this one standing. I think if that's going to benefit him in any sort of way, it's got to be where they're both exhausted and Kazama can't make anything work. But the pick is still that he gets the knockout early. Charalampos Grigoriou. Again, been through their losses. 3 of those losses come in the last 2 years, and they're all knockouts against Toshiomi Kazama. It's just the big glaring hole in this matchup, and I have to count on it for my prediction, if not my bet. Charalampos Grigoriou is the prediction. He's not the bet right now, as his line is widened. But of course, I'm going to look for the prop because I think even if he doesn't get the round 1 knockout and he's winning this fight, it's still by round 2 or even round 3 knockout. I have a hard time envisioning him winning this fight without putting Kazama away. So I will play him by knockout. And on the flip side, I don't know if I'd play anything with Kazama. Maybe I'll play everything. You know how it goes here. Next up, we have Nascimento versus Jafel Filho. My prediction for this fight is Jafel Filho wins, and I've got him winning by decision. Did I just say that out loud? It's a stupid fucking pick. I agree with you. But it's still my pick. I'm going with him winning by decision, and I guess it's based mostly on the losses of Nascimento. He's never been finished, even though he's been in some incredibly tight spots, which I'll get to in a minute. But I'll say I don't think either guy should get finished, but it really wouldn't surprise me so much because these guys are both potently dangerous fighters. Incredibly dangerous, especially on the ground. And I do envision this being a grappling match, which would honestly be fucking awesome. Although, to be honest, if it was kept on the feet, I think that favors Jafel Filho. Nascimento is not a bad striker at all, maybe even more technical. He might be a better technical fighter, but I think Jafel Filho is more dangerous, hits harder, and will be more likely to rack up the better points in a kickboxing battle. Nascimento, he's got a record of 20-6, 2 TKO wins, 14 submissions, and 4 decisions. Like I said, very dangerous. The TKOs, one of them was a doctor stoppage, and the other one was ground and pound over a total scrub. It wasn't like he had him in the back mount. It was just over before it even began, really. But he's still a very dangerous submission artist. His 6 losses are all by decision. Never been finished, and he's lost only to really good fighters. Tagir Ulanbekov in the UFC, Raulian Paiva on the Contender Series, Yuki Montoya, Bruno Azevedo, and Ricardo Ramos before getting to the UFC, as well as Will Campuzano, who beat him by 5-round decision. He's been in some rough spots in these fights. Will Campuzano had him in a deep choke, pretty deep into the fight. The guy Bruno Azevedo had him in a deep choke at the end of round 1, deep into round 4 and round 3. Tagir Ulanbekov had him in a very deep choke. He leaves himself open, but I think he's very confident that he's not going to get submitted, Alan Nascimento. He's incredibly tough to get out of there. And like I said, some of these submissions against the guy Bruno, he was fighting them with like a minute left in round 4 on complete exhaustion. So I think a lot of his submission defense, and I'd be very surprised if Jafel Filho finished him. Although, like I said, not too surprised because they're also fucking dangerous. On the flip side, Jafel Filho's only got 3 losses, but 2 of them are finishes, and they're both round 3 submissions. Rear naked choke to this guy Luan Mateus. Haven't seen it, I tried. And a rear naked face crank, neck crank to that asshole used to be in the UFC. What was his name? Muhammad Makayev. What happened to him? Anyway, all right, I'm done getting cute here. But in that fight, even though he succumbed to the sub late, he, a minute before that, nearly broke the leg of Muhammad Makayev with a knee bar, which on its own displayed a lot of great traits for Jafel Filho, who, like most fighters, was really up against it in that matchup. But I do think there's, if anybody's going to get finished, I would pick Alan Nascimento to win by round 3 rear naked choke. So I will be looking to throw sprinkles on that. But again, the pick and the play is Jafel Filho. And it's because I think Nascimento, even though I consider him to be the overall superior grappler, I think Jafel Filho is still a very good grappler. And I think Nascimento is more likely to accept bottom position. And that comes with attempting submissions, getting overzealous, and the rest of it. I think Jafel Filho is really skilled on the ground, and even though he might be a half step behind, I think he's the sharper athlete, And I think he'll be able to outpoint Nascimento just by securing top position. And on the feet, Nascimento has the cleaner striking, perhaps, but Jafel Filho is more dangerous. He's going to rack up the more valuable points on the feet for whenever it's there, I believe. And unlike Nascimento's two meaningless TKO victories, Jafel Filho's got a few. Five, actually, I think. And the last of which came against Echevarria, whatever his name is. Echevarria. It's actually Echevarria on the Contender Series, where he went through him in round 3 after getting his leg chopped up very badly, where he couldn't even walk out of the octagon. But then he just forced the action, clipped him with a left hook, and got him out of there. Danger is on the side of Jafel Filho, even though on paper he's much less durable than the rest of it. I still think here he's not facing too much striking danger at all against Nascimento, certainly. And I think he would get the bigger moments and definitely get the better of him over the course of 15 minutes on the feet. On the ground, like I said, Nascimento is better overall. But is he good enough to submit Jafel Filho? I don't think he is. Not in the way he did like Carlos Hernandez anyway. I think if he does, it's him fatiguing him and getting him out of there down the stretch. I think Jafel Filho will be able to out-scramble Nascimento just by being the stronger athlete. And I think he'll be able to secure top position and scratch and claw for a tight decision victory. That's my prediction for this fight. Nascimento's lost plenty of fights like that. He's made shit work for him. He doesn't stop working on the ground. It's not just like you take him down, he's done. You have to worry about every submission in the book, and he will fight like that on complete exhaustion, which he probably won't have a chance to fight on exhaustion here because it's only 3 rounds. But my point is he has that endless jiu-jitsu where I think you can have him dead to rights, fucking in a coma, and he'll still be defending chokes and attempting them as well. So I expect a really fun ground battle. Obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if Nascimento was able to win. I think if he does get it to the ground, he'd be wise to secure control, body triangle, and whatever, and just try to win the positional battle instead of trying to go through Jafel Filho, because Filho's skilled, more skilled than a lot of the guys Nascimento has fought, and I think he could turn this one around and score some points on the ground, even when the position seems to be working against him at first. So Jafel Filho is the pick. He is the bet. I will wait for the props to see what else jumps out at me. I think his only real path to victory is decision, even though, again, he's very dangerous. So I will look to play that as well, unless it's tight to his money line. And as for Alan Nascimento, even though I think decision is most likely for his path to victory for sure, I feel like I'm going to waste some money on him winning by round 3 submission, maybe round 2 submission. He's only been finished twice, Jafel Filho, and perhaps it's no coincidence that both were in round 3. So there's that. Up next, we have Chelsea Chandler versus Yana Santos. My prediction for the fight is Chelsea Chandler wins, and I've got her winning by decision, I guess. The basis for the pick is on that professional athlete level. Chelsea is 30 years old, theoretically in her prime. She's been much more active. She hasn't started a family or anything as of late. And I'm pretty sure she still goes to sleep dreaming of the UFC title. Yana Santos, even though she's only 34 years old, she's recently had some kids or started a family anyway. I don't know. And she's had 3 losses in a row and also been fighting inconsistently. I don't think she thinks of the world title anymore. So on that level, Chelsea Chandler's the hungrier dog. Not to sound like I host fucking dog fights. And also Chelsea Chandler is the more physical fighter. I think on the technical level, she wins the fight by being the more physical fighter. I don't think Yana Santos is going to be able to crowd her and smother her and do that leaning against the cage shtick. I don't think that's going to work against Chelsea. I think Chelsea's more dangerous on the outside and more dangerous on the inside, just with her physicality. And Yana's been finished a few times. I mean, I'd hate to point to her finish losses because, again, she's got such a much deeper resume than Chelsea Chandler that it's almost unfair. But she has been finished a few times. TKO'd by Chris Cyborg, Aspen Ladd, and Irene Aldana. And while Chelsea Chandler may not have a reputation as a big knockout artist. She's got a good straight left, and she knocked one girl out with a right hook, I believe. And she's a big physical girl. Probably would rather be fighting at 145, but this is 135, which I should mention is a concern. I mean, I think they'll make the weight because they signed up to make the weight, but Chelsea Chandler, especially, I think, there's some doubt there. Not only with her making the weight and giving up part of her purse, but also taxing herself with a tough weight cut, even if she does make it, and having a rougher fight because of it. But still, I'm leaning towards Chelsea Chandler. Her only two losses are to Norma Dumont and Kerry Kennison. This girl, Kerry Kennison, beat her in her debut, had a lot of good control over Chelsea, got her to the ground every round. Chelsea survived some bad spots, set up a triangle, made shit work for her, but wasn't able to win the fight. And against Norma Dumont's a really, really good fighter, currently in her prime, one of the best fighters in the UFC. That was a really tall order after going 1-0 in the UFC. But I think that was at 145, so that's what happens when there's fucking three fighters in the division. You're fighting world-class fighters as soon as you walk in the door. But no shame in those losses. But I do think those are two physical girls there. The girl, Kerry Kennison, was physically dominant over Chelsea and a bigger Chelsea. And I don't think Yana Santos is going to be able to physically bully Chelsea Chandler and win that type of fight. Doesn't mean she can't win another fight because Yana Santos is a viable grinder. She can be the cardio kickboxer or the smothering clinch fighter, but she's got experience to back it all up and cardio and the rest of it. This is definitely a close matchup. I just favor Chelsea Chandler because I think she's going to be tough to dominate. I think she hits harder on the inside and on the outside, and her ground game isn't bad either. She's gotten a few finishes on the ground, but she's got a good heavy top game. And if she advances the mount, she throws heavy bombs. She's very dangerous on top. She did the Julia Stoliarenko. And Yana Santos, she's only been submitted once, and it was the Tanya Evinger in the rematch after she won by armbar, but the ref moved her arm and whatever the fuck. It was overturned. But Yana Santos, it's pretty tough to go through her on the ground. But I do think if she's in a bad spot with Chelsea on top of her, especially if Yana's half thinking about retirement or whatever, it could be troublesome. Chelsea Chandler's physical and dangerous. That win over Julia Stoliarenko was very, very impressive. Also got a few more finishes on the ground, like I said. Julia Stoliarenko. That girl, Brittany Victoria Grizel, she beat her by round 2 finish. Probably should have come on the ground, but they got up and she clipped her with a punch right away. So technically it's a standing finish, but she did her best work on the ground. She got a rear naked choke over the girl Liv Parker, or Olivia Parker. Chelsea Chandler hasn't had a long career, but she's shown a lot of skills and a lot of great traits. Aside from that time when she ran away from Norma Dumont, I guess. I don't know if that was a great trait. But I'm trusting her to win. I think she's got more upside. I know she's got 2 feet in and thinking about MMA, so she's my pick to win. Chelsea Chandler. I played her money line. Decision is the pick, but whatever. I'm comfortable with the money line as of now. Up next, we have the co-main event of this video, and perhaps the co-main event of the card, because Javid Basharat and Chris Gutierrez was pulled earlier today. So they're no longer fighting. I'm pretty sure this will get the promotion, but it'd be a hell of a co-main event anyway. My prediction for this fight is Damon Jackson. I've got him beating Chepe Mariscal by decision. I think that's his primary path to victory for sure, Damon Jackson, although not the only path to victory. And for Chepe Mariscal on the flip side, if he was going to win, I'd say knockout would come before decision, but decision wouldn't surprise me either. However, the pick is Damon Jackson. He's the bet. I'll bet on Chepe winning by knockout as well. But I do think Damon Jackson is going to win this fight by hitting some timely takedowns and securing position and not allowing Chepe to out-scramble him. Chepe Mariscal is a guy who can handle grapplers all over him. Even before he got to the UFC, he had a lot of hard battles, tight decisions with Pat Sabatini and Bryce Mitchell and Yusuf Zalal. He lost the Bryce Mitchell fight for sure, but he looked good in the end, and he's a tough guy to get out of there in the first place. I mean, almost impossible, it seems like, even though one guy's done it. I'll get to that in a minute. But he's a really tough guy to control as well. So it's got me worried. Damon Jackson, though, I think is a little better and a little bigger, and I think he can duplicate that success he had in like the Dan Argueta fight and slow this fight down, especially if he's looking to do so. He needs to be looking to do so instead of trying to knock out Chepe or whatever. We've seen Damon Jackson fall into that before, but he is a grappler, and he's got to think like a grappler, despite the result he had against Pat Sabatini last year, which was a beautiful win. And Chepe Mariscal actually beat Sabatini as well, as I just mentioned. It was a split decision. The biggest liability in this matchup is the chin of Damon Jackson. We've seen it cost him plenty of times. Dan Ige last year, or this year, whatever it was, we saw him get knocked out by Ilya Taporia, no shame there. Movlid Habulayev, very good fighter if you don't know him. And Kevin Aguilar got him out of there in round 3. Damon Jackson, his chin is the biggest liability in this matchup, no doubt about it. Chepe Mariscal has the power to crack that chin as well, and he's got the aggression to give himself a shot. So I'll definitely be playing Chepe by knockout, but I do think he's not quite as ferocious as most of the guys that have knocked him out, and I do think Damon Jackson will be able to hit those takedowns here because he's going to be looking to. Chepe is no slouch at all with wrestling and judo. He's a tough guy to out-grapple. But I think Damon Jackson just needs that one brief advantage. And with his jiu-jitsu, if it's on the ground, he can secure control in a way that others can't. And he can do so pretty quickly. Mariscal's been TKO'd 3 times as well. May as well mention that. One of them was a legit knockout to Joe Anderson Brito, who's the most dangerous man in the world. So there's no shame there. Another one is to Steve Garcia, who's the most ferocious man in the world. There's no shame there. Even though the stoppage was so-so. Chepe was roughed up and hurt, but it wasn't the greatest stoppage. He was okay. It was just bad positioning, and the fight was stopped. He was getting up and whatever. And then his other TKO loss was to Gregor Gillespie, former UFC fighter, probably still ranked. I don't fucking know. He hasn't fought in like 5 years, but he's probably still ranked. Either way, he was a beast of a wrestler and had excellent submission grappling to go along with it. He took down, mounted, back mounted, and pounded the shit out of Chepe. That was a loss on the ground, his only real loss on the ground. And it is a path to victory for Damon Jackson, but he doesn't have that wrestling control, those hips of Gregor Gillespie. That was a beast on top of Chepe. So even though he's been put away a few times, he's never been subbed, and I do think the overwhelming primary path for Damon Jackson is a decision, and it's with slowing the fight down. On the feet, he's got height and reach, but I think he's outgunned physically with the chin and the rest of it. But also, I think he's going to get the worst of the striking battle against Chepe. Chepe mixes things up very well. He's got pressure on his side, and he hits harder. So he'd be winning either the points battle or the first knockout battle, in my opinion. Damon Jackson has to get this to the fore. I think he will. I think it's plan A for him. Pretend to throw a few strikes, take him down, slow this fight down, and stop those hips from wiggling and scrambling. Damon Jackson, plus 180 is the bet. I will look for the props. And of course, no matter what the props are, I'll probably be betting on Chepe Mariscal by knockout. Because again, it's the biggest liability in this matchup. And in the main event of the evening, we have Sergey Spivak taking on Marcin Tybura. This is a rematch from a fight 4 years ago. Probably right around the time Leon Edwards fought Bilal Muhammad. And seeing as I've learned nothing from that fight, I'm also going to pick Marcin Tybura to win. I'm picking Tybura to win. I'll go with him winning by a TKO in round 3. Mix it up a little bit. Their first fight was a decision win for Tybura. He won the fight with ground control. Was pretty much dominant throughout the whole fight. Spivak reversed him in the end and whatever, but Tybura out Spivak, as I like to say. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. But that's half the basis for me picking them to win. The other half is since then, they've both had pretty damn good results. Each of them has 2 losses. And while Tybura's had a much tougher time, not with his losses, but really with his wins, he's been hurt in a bunch of them. He's still shown a bunch of great traits to carry him to a victory in those fights, and also wrestling as well. He's had scored the takedowns when he needed to, and I think he's still a big, strong heavyweight. Not that he's Cyril Gane or whatever, but I think he's going to be too much for Sergey Spivak. I'll say this, Sergey Spivak's looked incredible in his victory since that fight. Incredible. Tossing Derek Lewis around like a fucking pizza. That's as good as either one of them's ever looked. Just going through that guy. But even though Derek Lewis is a pretty damn big heavyweight, I think Marcin Tybura is a tougher guy to go through like that. The one guy I can remember really going through Tybura and taking him down like that was Alexander Romanov. Romanov had a dominant first round all over Tybura, and Romanov is a fucking beast, by the way. I know he hasn't looked like the beast he started off looking like, but he's still a fucking beast. But even in that fight, Tybura was tough to put away, kept round 1 from being a 10-8 round on 2 judges' scorecards, and then took over the fight and really beat up Romanov. And that was just another example of great traits of his. But nobody really takes him down and just smokes Marcin Tybura. The majority of his losses come via knockout. He's lost 5 times via knockout, the last of which comes to Tom Aspinall. No shame there. Aspinall also knocked out Sergey Spivak. And then before that, he was knocked out in 3 fights pretty close to each other. 3 out of 4 fights. He was knocked out to Derek Lewis with the comeback round 3 haymaker. Shamil Abdurakhimov, who really beat him up and then put him away in round 2. And Augusto Sakai, who went through him in a minute flat. 59 seconds. And at that point, after that fight, which was ironically right before the Sergey Spivak fight, I'd written off Marcin Tybura. I thought he's done. Yeah, they might give him another fight and he'll stick around, but it'll be mixed results until the knockouts pile up and he's done. But he beat Sergey Spivak. Then he proceeded to go on a 5-fight winning streak. And his only loss via finish in the last 5 years, 6 years, whatever it's been, is to Tom Aspinall. And the only other loss besides that is to Alexander Volkov, who is a unique physical challenge as a heavyweight and a damn tough athlete to get by. And again, every one of his victories, he's been hurt in a bunch of them. Alexander Romanov, Ben Rothwell, Greg Hardy. He's been hurt, but he's battled his way back into every fight and taken over. Sergey Spivak, he's got a record of 16-4. He's got 3 TKO losses. His losses come to Cyril Gane in his last fight. Cyril Gane's bounce back fight after the Jones fight, and he looked really good. Just way too much for Spivak. Spivak did not like the way that was going from the beginning and wasn't able to do much about it. Tom Aspinall, who also went through him in a few minutes in round 1. And Walt Harris, who went through him in his UFC debut. Say what you will about Walt Harris, and you know what? Walt was beaten by Marcin Tybura on that recent streak of his. But Walt Harris, even though he may not be a perfect fighter, he's dangerous, and he's dangerous early. And he was able to go through Spivak after catching him. Those are his 3 knockout losses, and the 1 decision loss comes to Marcin Tybura. But since that Tybura fight, since that Tybura loss, he's looked really good, Sergey Spivak. Really, really good, especially in his last streak after getting knocked out by Tom Aspinall, putting away Greg Hardy, Augusto Sakai, and Derek Lewis with ease. Especially the Derek Lewis fight. The way he went through him was incredibly impressive. Even Daniel Cormier didn't look that good. So the upside is there. He does look very good. It does look, when you watch his victories, when I watch his victories, it looks like, yeah, he could do that to Tybura. But It just, unless Tybura's fallen off a cliff and he is 38 years old, I think he would be able to survive. And I think regardless of how round one works, if these guys are exerting themselves in any way, unless it's some dog shit round, I think Marcin Tybura is the fresher man after round one and the better man overall down the stretch. So I've got Marcin Tybura either out wrestling Sergey Spivak from the beginning or outlasting Spivak, turning it around, putting on the pressure, and getting Spivak out of there in the middle of the fight. That is my pick. He is my bet. I'll wait for the props. I think if Spivak is the win, it's going through Tybura early. But the pick is Tybura, and a lot of that weight is because of the matchup. The first matchup, which again, Bilal Muhammad should have opened my eyes to such things, but I'm still putting a lot of weight on that first fight, and Marcin Tybura is my pick to win this fight. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.